agent to execute your findings. So what you are doing when you look at 10 different things, in your mind you have an idea of what you like. And what you like is not so easy to transfer to data directly. The point I want to make is there is something called tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is knowledge that is not necessarily captured in the data. Okay? It is this tacit knowledge that we will eventually need to transfer to our models. And during these conversations now, we will repeatedly come back to the data as the make or break characters. To your point, we don't know what you like unless you write it out or you somehow have it, and this is going to be an issue in the long term.
And I will say we actually know a little bit of what you like through the loyalty programs, right? And through your transaction records. We kind of know where you are at. And so that's a starting point. But agents can understand your preferences, your constraints, and build from there.
So let me just summarize this particular point. It seems to me, I suppose most of you are in this, that for us, for those portions where we as humans spend a lot of time, and I don't think agents doing the final grunt work is a really big add value for me. At the time when I'm spending for decision, evaluating this versus this versus this, it's not just requires data. Until those things get captured in data, agentic commerces will have limitations in what it can do. Okay? She's saying that we know a little bit. He's saying that some other models will emerge. But therefore, while this is a good thing, I think we will still, I think there are ways to go, if I may say so, because till this portion gets
we shouldn't leave it at that, though. I think you're making a point. I think we shouldn't leave it that agentic AI commerce won't be able to do X, Y, Z. No, I think we know a lot about you.
Not right now.
In fact, no, even right now, we know a lot about a lot of people. By we, I mean there is so much data. Every time you touch your phone, you are generating data. Every time you browse and not click, you are generating data. And today, that data can make or break. So my point is we're not, the way you're ending this part is that, we know little, it's going to take a long, and to your point, Janet, we know a lot. Yeah. We need to know more, but we know a lot.
Okay. I can give an actual example of how I personally used agentic technology. This is funny because, I'm a computer science grad, spent decades in this field, and I was very nervous starting out with agents. But here comes December 29th. And by December 30th, I have to fund my 401k. Otherwise, I lack retirement for the year because IRS taxes, you have to fund your retirement. So I realized on 29th of December, I haven't funded my own 401k, which is my retirement plan. And I'm panicked. I call my custodian, which is Fidelity, and Fidelity tells me I have to use an agent. And I'm nervous as hell. I've never used an agent, especially to transact money, move money from my bank to my IRS. But here's where the tipping point came. One, the agent was trusted. The custodian, it was a custodian telling me to use the agent. Two, the agent asked me 3 times, requested my consent 3 times for the exact amount of money to the dollar digits, like to the points, right, to the cents, what money needs to be moved from what account to what account. It saved me a trip, 1 hour to the bank, standing in line, no appointment, last day. I was terribly in risk of missing my 401k contributions. Agentic was able to do it fine, and the agent did not go any further with that. The agent was de-instantiated after that transaction. It was a very trustworthy transaction. And I would love the convenience of such agents to help out in the future in a trusted environment. And this is just one application. It could extend.
Okay, good point. Let me just one question which maybe Prakhar can answer or someone else can. What kind of traction are you seeing from merchants and users as of now about this?
Sure.
For the first Prakhar, because it's addressed to him, and then somebody else can.
I think for so merchants are directly asking us that we need agents. So in Janet's example of Fidelity, like Fidelity wants to build this agent, right? And so this is probably the first time in technology that at least I have seen over a decade here that, look, the merchant is saying, I want this. Generally, you build technology and then you try to sell it. it's the other way around, right? Like, I mean, if you were to do a TLDR of your first round, one can argue that, look, agentic commerce is brittle, it's narrow, like it's not fully scalable yet, the data is not there, the models are too generalized, right? Like the protocols are not. You can list down million use cases as to why agentic commerce is not ready. But here, merchant comes and says that, look, I think I can at least drive productivity. Or, you know what, I'm willing to put a merchant, agent on my website, and I want consumer to interact. You know why, in our hypothesis is that why they want to do this is because this is probably the first time when you interact with an agent, you are creating something called as unstructured data. And that has never been created before. Like, because all the data that has been created so far in technology was click data, was like structured data, right? Like, here is what you're doing, right? Like, natural language processing was limited. But, and when ChatGPT came out, like, yes, OpenAI has a lot of data, unstructured data, right? So now, Fidelity wants to know this agent, right? Like, a coffee seller needs to know, okay, do people actually like cappuccino? Do things, which of the kurta will actually sell, which of the necklace does actually have a demand, because I might get it wrong on the first shot, but then on the second shot, I might fix my supply chain. And that is unprecedented. And so what at PayPal, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to say, okay, good, awesome, merchants want it, we are going to support it. And to Janet's point, what are the 3 tenets for agentic commerce to work, right? Like, the first is trust, literally trust. If there is no trust, this game is over, right? Like, so you need some sort of Aadhaar equivalent for agentic commerce, right? Like, that's first, right? Second is the money flow. Like, how does money flow between 2 agents? Like, so you need an UPI equivalent of agentic commerce, right? Like, the third thing, what you need is some sort of a ONDC equivalent, right? Like, you need some interoperable platform of how this will work, right? And so at PayPal, we are trying to build all this infrastructure, right, to make this happen.
And yeah.
Yes. So we've sort of seen, 7 to 9 times of a difference of doing commerce the agentic way versus without agentic. So what happens is the consumer comes, let's say it's a piece of apparel. Traditionally, you just look at the apparel. Here we come back and say, hey, do you want us to try this on you? Yes. Do you want to now try this in a specific setting? Let's say I'm going to a cocktail party. Yes. Right? So that's conversation happening between the consumer and the agent. And maybe the consumer says, yes, I like, no, I don't like, give me something else. Right? And then there comes a point where the consumer says, okay, I think this is good. I'm convinced this makes sense for me. And then you sort of hand it over to the merchant, right? The merchant e-commerce platform. And the difference we are seeing is you just send a user the old-fashioned way and this way, right? That conversion is seeing a 7 to 9 times difference, right? So the merchants are getting users that are a lot more interested than they got in the past. That's happening because the indecision you spoke of, right? That's something I'm iterating with the agent. Works, doesn't work, modify. And so that's how we got there.
And I can add to this conversation. I was in Dubai last week, and we were in a roundtable with the merchants. And one of the things the merchants are finding out that AI is disrupting everybody at a very, very large scale. So before, the merchants were places where we went to transact. We did the transaction fundamentally. And now transaction is happening worldwide. So people are buying things from the internet, Amazon, everywhere that they can. So we no longer go to the merchants to transact. So what is the role of merchants when the transaction can happen anywhere in the world and through many different versions rather than through a storefront? So now merchants are starting to think about what is the role of a storefront, really? The role of a storefront then becomes about intent, community. Why do people come there? To make network with other people, similarities, things they like. My community, if I'm a golf player, I go to the golf storefront to find other golf players. What does that community look like? How do I have an intent around that? So those experience, what is the experience of going to a storefront? These things now matter far more than really going to a merchant for transaction. What the merchant sells, you can find out through so many different ways.
All right, great. So let's move on. So it seems not only agents will help us, all the merchants want it, agents are helping and what was clarified. Even in the area where humans need to make decisions, you can have an agent helping you make decision, and a lot of data is already there. Good. Now let's move on to the next point, which she referred to, and also trust and safety. So, so that, of course, seems to be the key point. So there's a question for Parag about what evidence of identity authorization should be made mandatory so the trust is built in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
I think
so
everyone's right to point out, look, we are not going to be transacting with any money unless we have trust in these systems, okay? It's as simple as that. And today, generative AI models very much need to act on our behalf with that kind of trust. So there's three things that we point out, and I have some notes here. You know, today's chat tools are becoming our digital proxy. That's a big ask. We are moving from just them chatting to us to them being a proxy of us in the digital world. So that's a different ball game. From passwords, we are moving on to machine-grade trust frameworks, like you're mentioning. You know, you no longer can have a password to log in, and you have many agents running on your behalf. The agents need to have their own identity. And like you point out, there are three things. You know, there's identity itself, and we need to ensure that each agent has a cryptographically proven identity that stays with that agent for the period of time that it transacts in. That agent's identity should in no way be able to be compromised by other agents or, in fact, by other users. So the key piece is building up identity for agents, and there are already frameworks like that. The SPIFFE, SPIF, for example, is an interesting framework. You could use X509 certs in this space to, again, go down the path of identifying agents. That's one thing. In addition to identity, authorization is key. And where we're heading with authorization is granular authorization. Gone are the days where you gave, you know, access to your database to do whatever you can. As an example, if you give your agent read access to your emails and now you need it to write or send an email, this should be done dynamically within agents for the use case or the task at hand. And that is the kind of frameworks that are being developed now. So think granular access that is dynamic in nature. This is no easy task. This has to be done quickly. And finally, the third part is provenance. You need to be able to have a chain of custody, as you know. Blockchain is a really good example of that. But more generally, agents will need a chain of custody. They will need a way to prove that the agents are who they are, and they continue to be who they are. If you can do these three things, you then have an accountability layer. You know, you have a layered responsibility, which is interesting. You also need redress mechanisms. This is why the world of transactions, the online world works, because you have strong redress mechanisms. In fact, MasterCard is an excellent example of how that works. We can use MasterCard's cards anywhere, for example. So we need agents to have, if an agent does something on your behalf, we need those redress mechanisms, pointing not just to you. So in the future, it is not me, Parag Sharma, interacting. It's Parag Sharma and his agent Y interacting. And my personality online is going to become me and my agents doing, hopefully, some nice things on my behalf and not wasting my money or spending my money inappropriately.
If I may add one thing, which is very short, yeah. I think is if you believe the modality of the conversation of agentic commerce, will it be voice or will it be chat? Because if it is voice, then you need to somehow figure out how to identify it as genuine and not fake. And then even if somebody is inherently passing sensitive information, like my Aadhaar card number or social security number, how do I not allow it to hit LLM? So apart from identity, there is a security layer that is highly dependent on the mode of how you're operating. I think that needs to be solved.
Okay, and just one question to Arvind in this section of trust and safety. Where do you think governance needs to be kicked in? So one is the technology solutions of identity, security, trail, etc. Where do you think governance kicks in?
Look, as people building consumer products and technologies, it's very easy to keep reducing frictions. Oh, I know how to do an API integration, B2B partnerships. Everything happens without the human ever being in the foreground. That's very tempting. Now, when you do that, someday you're going to have an unhappy user saying, I did not want this to happen, right? And so it's counterintuitive, but it's actually valuable to, by design, have elements where we want to have friction, right? Have friction or require the end user to participate, to be in the loop, like how Janet had when she was trying to do her tax returns, to come back and say, this decision seems like a high-stakes decision. You may be very unhappy if you are not in the loop. Not that I can't automate it. It's just that I want you to actively participate. So that really is a very big element, which is don't get carried away by, I can write code to remove friction. Stop and ask, will the consumer in 1% or 0.1% of the situations be very unhappy saying, no, I did not want that? If so, intentionally have friction. That's the very layman version. I'm sure there is a framework version of doing governance, but this is how I understand it.
Okay, good point. I think this is a nice way to... There is technology solutions happening for ensuring that the agents can genuinely be your proxy, and security solutions. And his point is really, really very good, that human in the loop or user in the loop is essential to avoid the user who's unhappy, but in general to make sure there's a certain amount of visibility that is always needed, and that's best done by user in the loop. Okay, great. Let's move on to this, the next section, which is about platform and architectures that can enable it. Some of you must be technical people as well, so we'll try to have, the questions are technical. Let's see if we can keep it that it is accessible to most of us. So for Janet, if your question is, minimal architecture for secure and explainable agents, what are 2 or 3 non-negotiables that must be there in the architecture?
Okay, so to explain what architecture foundations we need, it is very important to understand the technology we are using behind these foundations. So when we go into agentic architectures, we're talking about high potency in AI. And what do I mean by high potency? These can learn just like humans can learn. So it's very non-deterministic type of learning, which means you can't control what the agent has learned. And so when you can't control what the agent has learned, how do you use agents very effectively? This is where the architecture foundations come into play. So you have to build foundations with non-negotiables. For example, you authenticate the identity of the agent. You understand the agent on what data it trained. So the transparency in its training models. You understand its toxicity level. You understand whether the data is biased from which the agent has learned. You understand what jailbreaks you need to put around the agent. Again, part of the architecture that you build. You understand toxicity, you understand jailbreaks, you understand whether there's data leakage. Is the agent actually leaking any data? So you're monitoring the agent from birth to almost death, if you will. There's a lot of observability built into it. Now, I will say where the complexity exists, right? Because agents work with memory just like human beings. So we have working memory, long-term, short-term, persistent memory, and now Amazon introduced something called episodic memory. Now, these are long-term memories that these agents can have. And so it's very important to monitor the foundations so you know how to flush the memory of the agent. How do you de-instantiate the agent just as much as you have created these agents? So these architecture foundations are non-negotiable when you actually build out agents.
So question for Prag, how do you see token-like constructs to facilitate agentic commerce? Without going into too much details of this thing, but please.
Yeah. So the idea of a token is that it's a digital representation of something, right? And in fact, we have been digitizing our lives and our world the whole time. The paperless office was about digitizing. What token is bringing is digitization with traceability or identity. Okay, the idea is that the token now represents something specific in some cases, or something more generic like currency in terms of stable coins, for example. But the whole idea of a token is to make something specific that represents something in the real world. Now, if you make something digital in the real world digital, there are so many benefits from it. Specifically, if you digitize money, for example. So stable coins are a way to digitize money. And the idea is that if you can digitize it, and you can safely and securely use it, then you have opened up a whole world of commerce that can be actioned through agents. So now you're combining the world of money, you're combining the world of payments, you're combining the world of technology into action. And that is amazing and very potent. So just to give you an example, you can have programmable agents that say, suppose you're buying something from your local grocer, and you say, look, if you don't deliver this before 6 p.m., you will not get paid X. You will get paid a much lesser amount. And that can be programmed. And the way it's possible that you can program is maybe through smart contracts or through other pieces of code. But the way you would pay that person is through tokens. The tokens could represent payments in the real world. Doesn't have to be on the blockchain. It could represent the real world payments. And you could still use traditional rails that are repeatedly used to complete these transactions. So that's, I think, what it is. And one of the use cases around this is exactly that. Use tokens for anything to manage your financial health, all the way to make little purchases. But with tokenization, you can now look at the agents as unique entities. You can look at your payment rails as unique entities. You can even have tokens of yourself, if you like, in the future. You know, the possibilities are endless.
If you can quickly explain to us all, we already have digital things, whether it's my card number and so on and so forth, where I don't really transact with real money. How is token going to add to that aspect? Just quickly.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, already in many countries, if you're traveling, you may not need to take any money out. I'm trying to do that with the rupee here. I haven't taken any rupees out yet, so I'm hoping I can, pass the couple of weeks without doing that. I think tokenization brings another layer of independence beyond digitization, because when you're looking at your account, you still have, all the traditional rails behind that bank account that you're looking at works exactly like that. With tokenization, there is a little more freedom to maneuver and maybe go beyond your traditional assets and look in different ways.
And with tokenization, the agents never touch your credentials. They touch the tokens. Okay. So your credentials are safe. Okay. They are embedded within the tokens. Okay.
So the question for Prakhar, follow up on this, is there are already existing trusted payment systems, artifacts, authentication, all that is there. Would they be useful in the agentic world? And how do you think tokens are going to eat up on that?
Yeah, I think tokens are foundational to agentic commerce, as Janet said, because for agents if agent is doing a transaction, like if you take a step back and say, like, what is an agent? Agent, and the building lowest atomic unit of an agent is a large language model, which is a probabilistic instrument. It's not deterministic instrument. So you actually want to make it as deterministic as possible. That's the first rule. Like if you're designing your architecture question, that's what you do at the first. You do that through protocols. Protocols are like highways, like go at the speed of 65 kilometers per hour, don't go beyond that. So that protocols give determinism. Tokens add security. So if I am basically trying to buy a purchase ticket and that transaction is basically taking 2 hours now, so that token has been issued. Agents already have been authenticated for those 2 hours to do that. So it could be asynchronous, could be synchronous, right? So now coming to your question, you asked, will the current payment infrastructure, yeah, at the lowest atomic level, yes, but a lot of work needs to happen on top of it. Just because your large language models are probabilistic, so you need protocols, you need somehow protocol to interact with tokens, right? You need to issue short-term tokens, long-term tokens, and you need to just keep going there. So that's how I see it.
Okay, so this section we end. So basically, it seems like the existing infrastructure will help move forward with this. But in future, if you want to do more, it's probably better to have token kind of systems which will provide security. Plus, you just added time aspect of it, which my credit card information doesn't, and so on. Okay, great. So thanks. So the last question is more general, and after that we still will have time for the. So inclusion and growth. I think at the end of the day, while we are all very excited about agentic commerce, we know finally it should benefit by economic growth, as well as inclusion, that not just growth for some, but exclusion of others. So this topic is about inclusion and growth. And my question for Arvind first is to ensure small merchants, rural users, and first-time digital participants, will they benefit from agentic commerce, or how will they benefit, whichever way you want to address it?
Sure. You're right. Eventually, it has to benefit everyone at population scale. I think the decision-making complexity exists for different transactions at different strata of the society. For example, someone at a lower strata, maybe buying detergent is a hard decision because a 100-gram packet, if you think about it, unit cost-wise, per gram is cheaper or more expensive. It's more expensive than buying 1 kg, right, per gram. But they may not have the absolute cash liquidity to go buy the 1 kg packet. The money they have today only allows them to buy 100 grams, right? So even though they're trying to optimize for cost, it is not unit cost. It is the actual absolute affordability they have. Someone else might be space constrained. They may not have storage space to buy everything in large quantity and have them. So the assistance needed for decision making in transaction, I think, is universal and present everywhere. The challenge is the underlying technology cost for answering this. Is that cheap enough to also support a low value transaction? That's what is going to determine will it reach them or not. And I think that's where we need to invest time to make sure that the agentic AI is also cheap enough to be able to support all of this. On the merchant side, I think something analogous to ONDC will help them participate. So the consumer story, it's going to be a consumer-led story, ultimately bottlenecked on how cheap can you run agentic AI. If we crack that, there is an opportunity even for those small transactions for every strata of society.
I'll add to this, like if you see, agentic commerce makes literally any merchant global, right? Like, and so you are now selling to Earth, right? Like, and that is dramatic because LLMs can understand any language. So language is not a barrier. Agents can understand any language. You can create website overnight. You can move money if you get tokens right and protocols right. Right? You can move money universally, like across the globe. So yeah, I mean, a merchant in Jaipur can now sell to a globe. And that was unprecedented. That was not possible. And which is why agentic commerce is not an incremental shift to e-commerce. It's a different paradigm. A lot of plumbing needs to happen, but that's the promise, right? Like, and so that's my hope.
Okay. And last question to Janet, in the same inclusion and growth. So going forward, which standard of public good would accelerate, save global agentic commerce?
So we need global governance, right? The way I think about it, if you think about AI knows no color. AI knows no country. AI knows no borders. So in a way, it brings a lot of equality. Equality to the large merchant, equality to the small merchant, equality to all. And if we have global standards, if we have global governance, then we can make transaction and other aspects of agentic technology very, very safe. So we need the governance. And I would say inclusion is super important, but responsibility is equally important. So we have to figure out how to create responsible agentic AI.
Great. So this ends our side of it. You heard it. We still have 15 minutes. Though we started 5 minutes late. Please make sure that whoever is circulating the mic goes there. If you have a question, please be very sharp. And if you want to make a statement, less than 1 minute, please. Just so people can. Now, whoever is moving the microphone around, I don't know who has that. Are there volunteers who are moving the microphone? Yeah, over there. Oh, okay, please go ahead. Question or comment?
Question.
Okay. Shark.
So my end goal is that when you bring these agents, right, they learn behavior patterns of how people are buying things and what their intent is essentially to buy also. Let's say if I am buying a particular type of furniture and that becomes a general understanding of the agents that most of the people are buying this furniture. So the merchant also knows that only this type of furniture is selling, so I'll make this type of furniture. Now, there might be some other person who is in a very small niche who needs a different type of furniture. Now, due to having these kind of streamlined intent recognition systems in place, will end up reinforcing those biases as well, right? Which people of majority using those agents will incorporate and inculcate into the demand and supply pipeline
I
itself.
think we got it. Yeah, one answer, so we can. I know many of you would have answers, but let's just take one. Whoever you want to go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Look, we already live in an information bubble to some degree, okay? Many algorithms feed what you want to watch, and if you click on it, you watch again. Having said that, what will evolve here is what makes sense both for the merchant to sell and for the consumer to buy. And the idea is that your niche products and services, algorithms have to be attuned to that. They have to follow it. You have to generate that data, and eventually those algorithms may cater to you depending on the kind of data you feed them. I don't know if you have a different.
Next question or comment. Whoever gets the microphone. I'm sorry, I'm not controlling the microphone, so whoever gets it. Yeah.
I'm Shashwat. I am the
Question or comment?
question.
Okay.
I'm the founder of Karada.ai. The question I have, one thing that we are solving for is discoverability of MCPs and all that. We do auto generation, creation, and deployment of MCP, ACP to agents. And in the discovery phase, what we want is microtransactions. For example, let's say I Love PDF creates an MCP using our platform, and some user types into their AI that convert this PDF to JPG. I want I Love PDF to make a small transaction that I could take from the user and give to I Love PDF. There are solutions in the crypto space like X402 that is there, but we have all major transaction companies here. So are there any traditional solutions that
Solution
are
to
coming?
that. Okay, one answer. Who wants
I mean,
to
this
take
is
it?
a classical case, like agent-to-agent payments, right? Like, and there's a lot of work going on agent-to-agent payments, right? Like, literally, you need protocols, tokens, right? Like, my bet is it will get solved in 6 months.
Yeah, okay. Can we also have one microphone on this side? Otherwise, all are going that side. Is there a microphone this side?
Hello? Yes, I have one
After
question.
this, can you please take it this side, and then we still have another 10 minutes. Yeah.
My name is Piyush. I have a very
Question?
short question.
Okay.
How do you see the role of biometrics in the world of agentic payments?
Role of biometrics. Who wants to take it up?
I mean, I can try. It ties back to the identity of it. Like, so if I can, and also authorization, right? Like, I mean, if I can exactly know who you are and authenticate you, life becomes much easier. So it goes back to identity.
Yeah, agents don't have biometrics, so it's not a thing. We have biometrics, but they need an equivalent, and I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Okay, who's next?
Hi,
Yes,
this is
please.
Neeraj. Quick
Yeah.
question. So in today's world, a customer can call up for a dispute. In tomorrow's world, how would a customer having a Citibank card running on MasterCard and a merchant is on PayPal, how would the agents dispute in the agentic world?
They'll work it out like we did, but I think get used to calling agents and get used to agents answering you, or in the near future, get used to your agent calling other agents and other agents calling your agents. It's all coming to a cinema near you. So wait for it.
All right. Okay. There's a lady here. We also have her this thing and get some lady questions from after this. Can we have some ladies or some elder people maybe ask give after this? Yeah. Go
Am I
ahead,
audible?
please.
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question on the dispute management process.
Yeah.
Let's say an agent does a transaction which the customer, right? So what kind of record keeping will you do which will aid in the dispute management process?
Okay. So that.
What are
goes
thoughts
back-
on dispute management evaluation? Yeah.
Good point. That goes to the earlier discussion of keeping track and traces and blockchain. But please do answer.
I mean, yeah, the dispute, so the merchant of, who is the merchant of record is very important. So if human did not authorize it, then somebody has to underwrite that risk, right? Like, and so back in e-commerce days, literally that's why PayPal was formed, because we could underwrite that risk, right? Like, and so in agentic commerce world, somebody has to underwrite that risk because bad actors will happen, right? Like, so that's the answer.
Actually, more generally for everyone, liability and where it sits becomes a key component. So that question probably could be differently said that, where is the liability in this transaction? And this is kind of an emerging field to some degree. If you buy a car and you drive out with the car and then you crash the car, that's your problem, okay? But if there's a mechanical failure in a car, that's the problem of the owner, and you can still go back to them. With agentic AI or with generative AI, this is becoming a bit more complicated to separate out. If you provide a foundation model and you at the end user are using it or giving it to your clients, then you are responsible for some aspect of it. But if you fine-tune the model, then you have now suddenly become more responsible for the outcome of the model. And those of you who have been following this, there have been some really, really interesting cases. There was a airlines company in Canada. I won't name the company, but the point was they had a chatbot on their website that gave wrong advice to somebody to buy a plane ticket now, and we'll reimburse you later. Actually, that was not the policy. The policy was you have to reach out to them first for this emergency ticket, and then you can buy it. So they took him to court. The company said, this has nothing to do with us. It's a chatbot from a third party, not our chatbot. We didn't train it with the model. And the judge said, it's your chatbot, sir. It's on your website. So liability is interesting.
So as of now, it seems to me, you may have agents working for you, but you're still liable.
Just like in commerce, you had liability.
Yeah.
You will have a third party in between.
Yeah, you can do that. All right. We still have 5 minutes.
Quick question on cybersecurity and risk. I think we can discuss that a little bit more. I can't think of a major company whose data was not breached and did not have cybersecurity issue in the recent past. So we talk about AI agents, but there are also rogue AI agents which have better incentives to game the system. So how do you deal with that? We're seeing that even biometrics are being compromised to a certain extent. Somebody asked that wonderful question. So how do you make those authentication layers and trust layers more and more secure? And how do you deal with cybersecurity?
Excellent question. We'll end if you can answer, I'm told we have to leave. Agents, we are thinking they're all doing good stuff for us, but she's saying, hey, look, there could be rogue agents and there could be...
Yeah, so the top cybersecurity consortium has found the top 10 security breaches. Of the top 10 security breaches, number 1 was misuse of credentials. Number 2 was publishing on behalf of you without your consent on a public website, like a social website. And then number 3 was going out there and crawling websites and getting infected and bringing the infection back home. So that's the trifecta that they talked about in the security councils. The fourth most potent one is this concept of persistent memory. So in addition to all of these things that you would have in the software world, you bring additional risks into the AI world. This is why it is super important to understand the birth and death of the agent. How was the agent born? How is the agent transacting? What data are we keeping? At what point of time did it turn toxic? And because of the earlier gentleman's question, with disputes, with everything, the world we lived in before agents was fragmented data. Now we have data, and it's living on a foundation. So from the minute that data is born, like you can promote and demote the data, so you know all the details, and so it's more controllable when you know the data.
Organizer is here. We have to end. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for participating.
We started in the morning, we finished in the afternoon, but a lot has changed since then. Your knowledge about agentic commerce. You want to show some enthusiasm and give FOMO to the people outside? Clap louder, they won't know what's happening here. And the organizers are awesome. They took that photo in the beginning and now they've created a memento out of that photograph. So another clap for all the people behind the scenes, from the security guards to the people out here and so on.